Good morning. Welcome to all of you who are here. I'm going to call the Board of Supervisors meeting of April 8th to order. Roll call, please.
Supervisor Carroll.
Here.
Supervisor Elias.
Presente.
Supervisor Miller.
Here.
Supervisor Valadez.
Present.
Chair Bronson.
Here. We will now rise for the invocation. Supervisor Elias.
Let me make one moment of personal privilege before we go on.
Okay.
You know, we have a big crowd here today, and I just wanted to note that some of these cameras in the room are not operated by Pima County government per se, but by a specific supervisory office. They are typically left on during the breaks, so you might want to be careful with your private conversations, because sometimes people's private conversations have ended up on YouTube for the world to see. And so with that in mind, I would just caution everybody to please stay away from those cameras and be careful about private comments that you might want to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. And now please rise for the invocation to be offered by Reverend Sharon Ragland of St. Mark's United Methodist Church, and the Pledge of Allegiance to follow, to be led by Supervisor Elias.
Good morning. Let's pray. We thank you, O God, for spring in the desert, for cool morning breezes and the bursting forth of wildflowers and blooming cacti, for the awakening of lizards and the running of rabbits and quail. We thank you for the lengthening of days, which reminds us of the constant cycle of life for which you have charge. We are grateful for the people you give us to love and serve, and who by some miracle also care about us. Most of all today, O God, we thank you for the privilege of serving you as elected and appointed and interested people. As we seek to be faithful to you and to all people, give us your guidance and your wisdom, your commitment to justice and fairness for all people, your everlasting gift of hope, sometimes in the midst of suffering and hardship. Help us to be wise with resources, compassionate with people, and ever guided by your love. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Excuse me. And now we will pause for pause. Officer Bowden, who you have Red. Who is Red? Tell us about Red.
You didn't like the prayer time. I can tell you that.
Good morning. This is Red. Red is a dog looking for a home. He was picked up on the streets of Tucson back in December of last year and has been waiting ever since. Nobody came looking for him, so he's eligible for adoption. He's been with us for long enough now that his adoption fee is waived and only the licensing fee will apply, so $15 gets this dog out the door. He will come neutered, microchipped, and vaccinated for rabies. He's a wonderful dog. He's about 2 and quite active. He's, I hear, a good jumper, so if you're into Frisbee, this might be a great companion for you. Plenty of energy. Our volunteers that walk him daily state that after about a quarter of a mile, he slows down a little bit. So if you can do a half-mile walk, this might make for a partially calm walk. He, like all the other animals in our facility, are very much in need of homes. If you've got room in your home and in your heart for a companion animal, please come and check them out. Plenty of cats, plenty of dogs. Animals that are not there longer than 2 weeks are at the $30 rate presently with the $15 licensing fee, so $45 out the door. All animals come altered, spayed or neutered, vaccinated and microchipped. So it's a great resource for a very reasonably priced pet. You can save all the extra cash to buy wonderful treats and toys for them. And please come on down and check them out. We're open from 12 to 7 on weekdays and 10 to 5 on weekends. And Red will be looking forward to all the visitors that he will hopefully get today after you've all met him. So thank you so much for your time, and please come and see us down at 4000 North Silver Bell if you're looking for a companion animal. Thank you. Come on, bud.
Thank you.
No, Madam Chair.
Supervisor Elias.
I was going to say that Red seems like a horse dog, but, you know, as I think about it, I think it's an auto racing dog, really. Anybody who can help us find a home for Red, you know, talk to your friends. I understand a lot of people who might be here can't take another dog, but talk to your friends and see if they need a pet. Talk to your fellow folks who go to church with you on Sunday and see if they need a dog. You know, we have a lot of nice animals over there at Animal Care, so we certainly appreciate anybody who would come by, and we would appreciate anybody being good to those animals and good to the folks who work over there at Animal Care. As you can see, they're all nice people. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have, I don't think Red wants to leave. I do. We do have one change to the agenda on the consent calendar, page 6, item 12, proclamation. We're going to remove the item from the consent calendar and present it on the regular agenda. If there are no objections, we'll proceed then with that. And now I'm going to move one item on the addendum agenda. First, we are honored today. That is addendum item number 1. It's a presentation by the Mexican Consulate of Tucson. We are pleased today to have with us Ricardo Albaran, Consul of Mexico. He's going to address us regarding the services offered to Pima County residents by the Mexican Consulate Office in Tucson. If you want to come forward. I know you have a great presentation for us.
For the Pima County Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Sharon Bronson, Chair, Ali Miller, Ms. Ramon Valdez, Ray Carroll, Richard Elias, and Choco Rivera, Administrator of the Pima County Board of Supervisors. It is my great honor to appear before you.
We need, okay, what is the direction? We need the, no, we're fine now. We're okay, yep, we're fine.
Yep,
we're good. I'm sorry for interrupting. I was
change.
getting directions from, our director back there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate the opportunity, and before this amazing crowd, I understand that it's the first time ever a Mexican consul appeared before Pima County Board of Supervisors, so it's a great honor to be here. You must know that the Mexican consulate is here to serve Pima and Pinal County, but because of the Tucson city, we are based here. We have been over here for more than 70 years. So it's a very historical consulate being here to serve the community as a whole, and of course to voice the Mexican community. We do prepare some slides for you, and you have a kit in your table, because I really would like to talk about the role of Mexico, the importance of Mexico, the U.S. and Mexico trade, some talks about immigration, but the most important, how about the Arizona-Mexico relationship, and as you stated at the very beginning, about the services that the Mexican consulate is providing here to the community as a whole. Just to start, we put, you're going to see in the slides, what is the role of Mexico in the international arena right now? This is the size of Mexico, which is very new. We are the 14 in terms of territory, the 11 in terms of population, the 14 in terms of GDP production, the 13 as a top trader of goods. Mexico is ranked as the best country to establish business in Latin America and the 35th in the world. And Mexico City itself is the 5th largest city in terms of population. But why Mexico now? This is probably the question that is around every business people, every magazine, in what they have called now the Mexico's momentum. What is different among Mexico? And what is different? Well, Mexico is different because of NAFTA, because we have signed more than 10 other different trade agreements with the U.S., with Japan, with Israel, with Latin American countries, which totalize 42 countries in a row, which with this network of trade agreements, we can reach 1 billion consumers. Mexico right now is considered as a relevant platform to produce, and to export to other countries. And we already have ongoing negotiations with the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement so far, right now, and for the establishment of a free trade zone as part of the Pacific Alliance, which is going to give Mexico more leverage in terms of trade and economic development. This is a figure and a map about Mexico that tries to portray Mexico as a whole, as an import and export country, and provides the same numbers that I already referred before. You must know that Mexico has engaged with the last new administration. President Peña Nieto administration have engaged in a big structural change. So starting 2013, President Peña Nieto signed a pact with the different political forces in Mexico in order to gain and reach major reforms. So 2013 was a highly success in our administration because we reached the agreement with every party around in order to have a political, an energy, and a financial, fiscal, and educational, and telecom and economics competence reform. This is happening right now, and 2014 is totally dedicated to produce the bylaws. So 2014 is going to be a highly legislative time in Mexico in order to produce this change. Mexico is trying to set itself to continue its growing, to continue working for a new leverage, for a new relationship for the world. But what about the U.S. and Mexico relationship? Well, probably the most significant aspect of our relationship is the border itself. At the border, we have just in 2,000-mile border in between Mexico and the U.S., 25 U.S. counties and 39 Mexican municipalities that encompass together around 13 million inhabitants sharing on an everyday basis at our border. So we do listen a lot of or get a lot of information in regards to what's going on at the border. Well, let me tell you, we have at the border also highly success stories in between our everyday exchange. We have human exchange, educational exchange. We have a region that encompasses, as I said before, 13 billion inhabitants. But it is said that the region itself is $30 billion economy in between Mexico and the U.S. So immigration and security issues are important areas of collaboration, but also economic operations thanks to NAFTA, and other areas such as environment, like the Border 2012 program, political, the border liaison mechanism that we already have in place, and cultural insight. Just on May 2013, during a very recent encounter in between President Peña Nieto and President Obama, the two of our presidents just signed 3 different pacts, totally designed to put us in the right path for a new trade exchange. One of them is the so-called DEAN, High-Level Economic Dialogue, that seeks to forge a more competitive and dynamic trade relationship between Mexico and the United States. The other one is the FOBESI. It's a bilateral forum on higher education, innovation, and research. This is in addition to seeking 21st century labor force, which will allow the region to become prosperous. The mission of the bilateral forum, the FOBESI, is to foster the mutual understanding between both countries through programs addressing student mobility, academic exchange, research, and innovation in areas of shared interest, and to contribute to the competitiveness and economic development of the region. You must know that one of the basic goals in between U.S. and Mexico so far, right now, from here to 2018, is to put 50,000 for the sake of the U.S. 50,000 U.S. students in Mexican universities. In our case, 100,000 Mexican students in U.S. universities. So far, right now, we have 14,000 students in U.S. universities studying different degrees, including PhDs and master degrees. Just here in the Arizona University, which we have a great relationship, we have 140 PhD and master degree students. So we can tell that we have a great relationship with Arizona University, which fosters the relationship in every sense of the word with not only the country, the city, and else. The last instrument that was signed by our presidents last May was the MUSAIC, Mexico-U.S. Entrepreneurship and Innovation Council. The goal is to foster and to support medium-sized and small enterprises to continue producing and exchanging on a very international level. What about the U.S. and Mexico trade? Well, let me just provide some specific facts about our relationship. Mexico already buys more U.S. products than any other nation, with the exception of Canada. Mexico and the United States are partners in manufacturing. U.S. investment in Mexico has grown nearly sixfold since NAFTA was put into place. Mexican companies have increased their foreign direct investment in the U.S., passing from $1.2 billion in 1993 to $12.6 billion in 2010. So Mexico is an investor in the U.S. also. Of course, U.S. is the main investor of the world in Mexico, encompassing more than $60 billion since 1993. These are part of the facts also in between the Mexico and the U.S. relationship. Production sharing, we have a very bilateral collaboration, and this is very important. A full 40% of the content in U.S. imports from Mexico is actually produced in the U.S. In other words, 40 cents of every dollar spent on imports from Mexico come back to the U.S., a quantity 10 times greater than the 4 cents returning for each dollar paid on Chinese imports. This is just to put us in perspective of the relationship and the importance of our exchange. This specific figure just tells you about agricultural trading between Mexico and the U.S. And you can see in the Nogales, Arizona area, we have a big share, almost $3 billion, which is more than 35% of the total agricultural trade in between Mexico and the U.S. More facts. Mexico is the top export destination for 5 states, for California, for Arizona, for New Mexico, for Texas, and for New Hampshire. The U.S. Mexico's main trade partner and Mexico is the 3rd trade partner of the U.S. for total trade. There are, and we provide a map, which is in your kits. There are 6 million U.S. jobs so far, right now, that depend on trade with Mexico. 2 border states that trade extensively with Mexico, which is California, 692,000 jobs. And Texas, 463,000 jobs, have the most. But Arizona has his share also. 100,000 jobs depend on the trade with Mexico, just in Arizona as a whole. What about immigration in between Mexico and the U.S.? Well, immigration is a very historical and complex phenomenon. I'm not going to spend pretty much on that. Just want to say that there are approximately 33.7 million people of Mexican origin living in the U.S. 12 million of them were born in Mexico. And according to the U.S. Department of State, over 1 million U.S. citizens are currently living in Mexico as students, retirees, or businessmen. This is the size of the U.S. population living in Mexico. What about Arizona and Mexico relationship? Well, Mexico is the main trade partner of Arizona. With about 20 million northbound visitors, border crossings annually in between Mexico and Arizona, this zone stands as one of the most active borders in the world. Mexican visitors spend approximately 7.3 million each day in Arizona, providing an annual impact in trade and economics of $2.3 billion a year. About $13 billion in merchandise are exchanged between the Grand Canyon state and Mexico, exceeds the trade between Mexico and Central America as a whole on a yearly basis. Just during the last years, Mexico exported about $6 billion in merchandise and received 34% of Arizona exports, which means $6.2 billion being computers and electronics as the main goods. More facts. $15 billion in goods headed to other states cross through Arizona ports of entry on a yearly basis. Regarding labor opportunities, as I said before, more than 100,000 jobs are directly related with trade with Mexico, just in Arizona. These are just a portrait of the very important Mexican companies that now work, perform, live, produce, and share in Tucson. Azarco, Grupo México, Cemex, the offshore group, Arizona Canning Company, or La Costeña, and Sucarmex. In this general scope, what about the Mexican consulate? Well, the Mexican consulate was established, as I said at the very beginning, more than 70,000 years ago. This consulate in particular encompass as a jurisdiction services to around 394,000 people, which is the Mexican population in the total Pima and Pinal counties. The relationship in between Arizona and Mexico is so important, so intensive, that we have 5 different consulates in Arizona. We have one in Phoenix, we have us in Tucson, and 3 Mexican consulates at the borderline, Yuma, Nogales, and Douglas. Those are 5 different consulates to provide services to the general population. Yes, we represent the Mexican community, but we provide a number of services to the American community as a whole. This is just the population and the share of the Mexican population in the main cities in Pima and Pinal, which is Tucson and Casa Grande. And this is, just wanted to present to you, the consulate network, the Mexican consulate network in the U.S. There is no any other more important consular network from one country into another country in the world. And this is because the size of the Mexican population and the requirements that they have from the Mexican federal government being here, living here, producing here in the U.S. So we do have 50 consulates in the U.S., 10 in Texas, 9 in California, and 11 along the borderline. We do not have one specific consulate in each one of the states, because that depends on the general population, the concentration of the Mexican population. That is why in my former post, I was serving 4 different states, being in Boise, Idaho. But here in Tucson, as far as the communities that concentrated, we just serve Pima and Pinal counties, and we left the rest of the jurisdiction to different consulates working with the different communities in Arizona. The Mexican consulate is really committed to protect and assist the Mexican community living in Pima and Pinal. We also promote cultural cooperation in order to enhance the relationship between Mexico and Tucson. These are our services here to the Mexican community, which include the issuance of official Mexican documents, Mexican legal documents, assistance in emergencies, providing accurate information about the current migration debates in order to prevent fraud or abuse, provide registry for people born outside of Mexico whose parents are Mexican citizens, promotion of different health, education, and social programs that benefit Mexican migrants and their families in Mexico. The consular representation also seeks to reach out the community as a whole through the issuance of work, study, or resident visas for non-Mexican citizens, or for strengthening the political relationship with local, state, and federal authorities, as well as promoting trade and investment with Mexico. We have also engaged pretty committed in fostering cultural exchange. So we do participate in different venues. At the Tucson Festival of Books, for the first time ever, we opened the Latin American Pavilion, in which we brought performers from Mexico. At the Mexican Film Festival with Tucson Cine Mexico, arts exhibitions, film screenings, and community and civic events. This is my presentation. I want to finish. Thank you, every one of you, for your time. And I, of course, am more than open to any specific question that you may want to pose. Thank you to the Board of Supervisors of Pima County.
Thank you, Council. Any questions or comments? Supervisor Elias.
I just wanted to thank Senor Pineda for coming here today and offering this presentation. I think it's important to examine how closely our economies are intertwined with each other, and is really the nature of the very beginnings of all our relationships with Mexico. And it's an important thing for all of us to remember the academic connections that we all have through our universities and through our youth and through our families, and how they grow and find intellectual curiosity and answers at those institutions. So I certainly appreciate that as well. Pima County intends to continue cooperating with the Consul of Mexico. We've always had an excellent relationship, and we appreciate that. As the United States county with the longest expansive border with Mexico, it is extremely important to us that we cooperate with you on public safety issues, as well as emergencies and situations where people become vulnerable, and that's very important to us. And in particular, you know, I send greetings from the Elias family to you as well, Senor Pineda, for coming here today. Our family has been here for many generations, and in fact, we came to the Pimeria Alta before it became a part of Mexico, but we're very close to our family in Mexico, and we respect the relationship that we have. So I bring you their greetings as well, and thank you for coming here today, Senor.
Thank you, Supervisor Elias.
Thank you, Supervisor Elias.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Valadez is next, and then we'll get to Supervisor Miller.
Senor Consul, I want to thank you for being here and for a very informative presentation that you gave today. I was actually very impressed with some of the things that you presented, and I think a lot of facts. We often hear a lot of conjecture, and it is very useful to us to have the kind of information you provided here today that's based on facts and history and data and science. So I want to thank you for that. Thank you also for coming before us. I know you've been working with Ms. Bravo, and I'm sure she's talked to you about the importance that we as Pima County, as Richard said, have placed in the relationship that we have with Sonora and with Mexico. And that not only do we recognize them as Arizona's largest trading partner, pero es familia. We have gone so far as to a very large portion of our economic development plan that's a written document for Pima County incorporates the importance of Mexico and Sonora into it. And that will continue, and I certainly hope that certainly grow, and that the efforts that Mexico and Sonora are making will bear even more fruit. So thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Miller.
Mr. Pineda, thank you very much for the presentation. It was very informative. One question I had is, you had the four highest trading partners of the 4 states, and one of them was New Hampshire. And I was curious about the products and the trade between the state of New Hampshire, because it's so far away from the border. And I was curious that other states closer to the border aren't as involved in trading with Mexico.
Yes, of course. It's electronics and computing.
Electronics and
Still,
computers,
yeah.
okay.
Basically.
Maple syrup.
Electronics and computer.
Thank you.
Yeah, mainly. Thank you.
It's very interesting that there's
Thank you
so
very
many.
much. Appreciate it.
Supervisor Carroll.
Mr. Counsel, Pineda, I'm delighted. I'm glad that you came. I hope you are feeling as welcomed as I was when I visited your council offices last month. Appreciate Sebastian and the rest of your staff preparing that report. I'm glad you could give us a hard copy, because I think it is important for us to share it through our offices with others that may be interested in expanding their trade or finding a new way to increase their business sales by trading more with Mexico. So I look forward to the relationship. Thank you again for being here. I know you've been in town for a year, but it's fabulous that you would be the first council to visit our chamber, and we hope that you felt very welcome here. Thank you so much.
More than honor. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And I just want to add, I think what really struck me and during your presentation and as you advanced it was the fact that we are one economic region, and that border needs to be seamless. So I appreciate the efforts that you are taking to make that happen. And I know we've been in dialogue with you trying to deal with moving goods and services through Mariposa. And we want to continue to see if we can't make that more. It's hardly seamless now. We need to bring some seamlessness to that process. And again, thanks so much for taking time out of your schedule to inform us. And with that, I would Supervisor Elias, Vice Chair, we'd like to present you with something. Before we move on to the next item, I just had a question. The council gave us some information. We have hard copies. I'm wondering, and I noticed it was a PowerPoint presentation, if there is some way we could get a link on our website to that presentation so others can view it.
That's a great idea. That's a very good idea.
Thank you. I'm going to, here we go. Move to the presentations now. On the regular agenda, we have item 5, presentation of a proclamation regarding Youth HIV/AIDS Awareness Day. What's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair, I'll move the item.
Motion and a second. Are there no objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Supervisor Elias, would you do the honors? And I think we have Jay Smith, Lene Lindsay, and Aaron Butler of Southern Arizona AIDS Foundation here to receive the proclamation.
See your pretty faces. Maybe not focus on mine so much. Come on over here. Come on this side. It's okay. Well, there's another whole side over here. That way you got me covered on both sides. Okay. Whereas Advocates for Youth in 2013 created Youth HIV/AIDS Awareness Day to be observed annually on the 10th day of April. And whereas on April 10, 2013, Tucson and Pima County joined in a national event dedicated to celebrating the hard work young people are doing across the country to fight the HIV/AIDS epidemic, educating the public about the impact of HIV/AIDS on young people, and honoring the lives of those we have lost in the struggle. And whereas Youth HIV/AIDS Awareness Day is an opportunity for people nationwide to unite in the fight to create an AIDS-free generation, to start an open dialogue about stigmas of being young and impacted by AIDS, HIV, and to educate others on how HIV issues affect young people across the nation. And whereas every month 1,000 young people are infected with HIV, and over 76,400 young people across the country currently are living with HIV. And whereas a coalition of local agency sponsors our Tucson event includes Southern Arizona AIDS Foundation, Arizona Life Links for Youth, Reaching Adolescence Prevention Project, that one was hard to say, Life Plus Project, HIV Youth Peer Education, BOS, and Maker House. Now therefore be it resolved that the Pima County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaims Thursday, April 10th, 2014 to be Youth HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, and encourages all Pima County residents ages 12 to 24 to participate with their friends and families in a community event on Thursday, April 10th from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Maker House in downtown Tucson at 283 North Stone, and to get involved in this opportunity to show support for young people in our community and to fight for an AIDS-free generation. Passed and adopted this 8th day of April 2014. And I'd just like to say thanks to these young people for their work and their continued efforts to bring about an AIDS-free generation. It's important for all of us. It's a very critical public health issue that we all have to be concerned with. And really understanding how horrible the stigma is attached to people living with HIV and how difficult it makes their lives should make us all stand up and realize that we are each other's neighbors and that we should treat each other like we would like to be treated. But that doesn't always work out. And in memory of those people who have lost their lives in that struggle against AIDS and HIV, I'd ask everybody to stand for a moment, so we have a moment of silence if you're able to stand. Please stand. And then we'll hear from these young people very briefly. Thank you. Please be seated. Any of you would like to make a comment, please? Anybody?
First off, I would like to thank the Board of Supervisors for acknowledging this day because it's very important for us to educate and inform the youth about the stigmas around HIV and AIDS, because 1 out of 4 young adults under 24 are infected with AIDS, and that's new cases. And I would like to once again invite youth 12 to 13 to come down to our event at Maker House with their trusted support or their trusted adult or guardian.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Supervisor Elias. Now I want to move to the consent calendar, item 12. We pulled that item. It is proclaiming the week of May 1st through the 7th to be Youth Week in Pima County. What's the pleasure of the board on this item?
Move the item. Second.
Motion and a second to approve. If there are no objections, motion carries. And Supervisor Valadez, will you present this? I think Peggy Nelson is here, who is the chairperson of Youth Activities for Elks Lodge, to receive the proclamation.
And if I may read it, whereas the Benevolent and Protective Order of Elks has designated the week of May 1st, 2014 through May 7th, 2014 as Elks National Youth Week to honor our country's younger citizens for their accomplishments and to give fitting recognition of their services to community, state, nation. And whereas Catalina Mountain Elks Lodge number 2815 will sponsor an observance during that week in tribute to the youth citizens of this community, and whereas no event could be more deserving of our support and participation than one such as this, dedicated to these young people who represent the nation's greatest resources and who in the years ahead will assume the responsibility for advancement of our free society. And whereas our youth need guidance, inspiration, and encouragement that we alone can give to help develop those qualities of character essential for future leadership needed to serve our nation. And whereas, to achieve this worthy objective, we should demonstrate our partnership with youth, our understanding of their hopes and aspirations, and our sincere willingness to help prepare them in every way for the responsibilities and opportunities of citizenship. Now therefore be it resolved that the Pima County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaims the week of May 1st, 2014 through May 7th, 2014 to be Youth Week in Pima County, and urges all departments of government, all civic, fraternal, and patriotic groups, and citizens generally to participate wholeheartedly in its observance. Passed and adopted this 8th day of April, 2014.
Catalina Mountain Elks, of course, is just one lodge out of thousands throughout the country. We have several programs that we do with the children, starting with Americanism essay, drug and awareness poster and essay competitions, our hoop shoot competition, soccer competition, student of the year, student of the month, which goes into student of the year. We do a lot with Special Olympics. We have a major event coming up on April 26th that's open to the public. It's our parking lot event to raise money for Special Olympics. And the public is welcome. We're on North Oracle Road up in Catalina. And I'm very proud of our lodge and of the Benevolent and Protective Order of Elks of the United States because of their commitment both to our children who will be our future tomorrow and also for our community service that we do in our community of Catalina. Thank you. And thank you, Board of Supervisors.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks to the Elks for all the work you're doing with the youth.
Appreciate you coming down too.
And now we're moving on to the addendum agenda item 3, presentation of a proclamation to Mark Reynolds, Elliot Lax, Ana Robles de Monge, and Mayra Reynosa, proclaiming April 11th through the 13th to be Global Youth Services Day. What's the pleasure of the board on this item? I'll move the item.
Second.
Motion and a second. If there are no objections, motion carries, and Supervisor Carroll will do the presentation.
This is working. This is for you all. There's your proclamation. Whereas Global Youth Services Day is a time for everyone to celebrate the contributions of young people that they make to their communities every day of the year through service and service learning. And whereas Global Youth Services Day, a program of Youth Service America, is one of the largest service events in the world and is dedicated solely to engineering. Let me switch it off. You can have that one. I'm taking the cue from our clerk there. Let's see if I can find that's a challenge. In 2014, Global Youth Services Day is being observed for the 26th year in all 50 states and for the 15th year globally in more than 100 countries on 6 continents. And whereas Pima County depends on youth as assets vital to its communities and benefits from their knowledge, idealism, skills, perspectives, ideas, and creativity, as the youths lead activities involving awareness, service, advocacy, and philanthropy. And whereas nearly 1/3 of the U.S. population, about 104 million residents, and nearly 1/2 of the global population is under 25 years old. And whereas the Edward M. Kennedy Service America Act recognizes Global Youth Service Day as a national day of service and calls on U.S. citizens to participate. And whereas Youth Service America and the Tucson Service Learning Group are mobilizing the residents of Pima County to serve their communities on Global Youth Services Days. And whereas high-quality community service and service learning programs increase young people's academic engagement and achievement, improve their workforce readiness and 21st century skills, refine their social, emotional, and behavioral skills, and enhance their civic knowledge and engagement, young people will improve their communities on Global Services Days by addressing a myriad of critical issues such as literacy, dropping out of high school, childhood obesity, hunger, poverty, environmental degradation, public safety, and disaster preparedness. And whereas Global Youth Services Days provides an opportunity for schools, community, and faith-based organizations, government agencies, businesses, and families to engage youth as active citizens, community leaders, and problem solvers. Be it resolved, thought we'd never get there, did you? That the Pima County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaims April 11th through the 13th to be Global Youth Services Day in Pima County and urges all residents to make service in their communities a high priority and a regular practice, passed and adopted this 8th day of April 2014 by Sharon Bronson, the Chair, and the Board of Supervisors. Thank you so much. Nice to see you. You got to stand up for 2 proclamations today. Good for you. Nice to see you. And I'm grateful to hear from you, the young people. Would you like to say a few words? Would you like to say a few words? Well, you look good holding that petition. Make sure they get their spokesperson here on the line.
On behalf of the Tucson Service Learning Group, I'd like to thank the board and especially Richard Elias' office and Mr. Keith Bagwell, who I think snuck out, we ran this through their office and we really appreciate the support. And thank you to the board for recognizing the youth of Pima County and their desire and ability to serve. And as the Reverend Ragland said in her invocation this morning, we should all be thankful for the opportunity to serve.
Just a quick heads up, this Friday between 4 and 7 p.m. downtown on Pennington Street is the annual Pennington Street Block Party, which is the signature project in our community for it. There'll be lots of youth there either doing projects at the block party, being recognized for things that they did earlier during the year, and the Ray Davies Citizens Award for high school seniors will be given out at the block party as well. So if you have a chance to come Friday afternoon, 4 p.m. till 7, or any part of that, please do so. There's other events around town as well. If you go to the Global Youth Service Day website, gysd.org, you can look at a map of the world which shows where all the projects are globally. And if you click on Southern Arizona, you get an idea of what's happening in our community. Thanks.
Thank you all for being here. Have a nice day and congratulations.
Carol. Now move on to item 2, presentation of a proclamation to Shirley Mooney of the American Association of Women, Tucson branch, proclaiming the day of Tuesday, April 8th to be Equal Pay Day. What's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair, I'll move the item.
Motion and a second to approve. If there are no objection, motion carries, and I will make the presentation not to Shirley but to Laura Penny. Or you're not? No. Is Shirley here? Oh, there she is. You were right. Okay. All right. Whereas, more than 50 years after Congress passed and President John F. Kennedy signed the Equal Pay Act of 1963, women, especially minority women, continue to suffer the consequences of unequal pay. And whereas, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, women working full-time in 2012 earned an average of 77% of the earnings of their male counterparts, indicating that there has been very little change in this in a century and a half, in half a century. Boy, probably at least a century and a half, right? And whereas, according to one estimate, college-educated women working full-time earn more than $500,000 less than their male peers over a lifetime. And whereas a lifetime of lower pay means women have less income to save for retirement and less income counted for Social Security or a pension benefit formula. And whereas the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act of 2009 restored employees' rights to challenge gender pay gaps in court, but Congress needs to do more to close loopholes in the Equal Pay Act and to improve its effectiveness by passing the Paycheck Fairness Act. And whereas, since nearly 4 in 10 mothers are primary family breadwinners and nearly 2/3 are significant earners, pay equity is critical to families' economic security. Whereas, pay equity policies can be implemented easily and without undue cost in both the public and private sectors. And whereas, Tuesday, April 8th, symbolizes the approximate time when the wages paid to U.S. women since January 1st, 2013 catch up with wages paid to men in calendar year 2013. Now, therefore, be it resolved
that the Pima County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaims Tuesday, April 8th, 2014 to be Equal Pay Day and urges all Pima County residents to recognize the full value of women's skills and their significant contributions to the labor force, and further encourages local businesses to conduct internal pay evaluations to ensure their women employees are paid fairly, passed and adopted this 8th day of April 2014. Did you want to say a few words?
Thank you. And we have representatives here from the Women's Foundation of Southern Arizona, the Women's Political Caucus, and the Pima County Tucson Women's Commission are all represented here today, and we appreciate the proclamation.
Appreciate all the work that your organization does, and Laura, I understand that your organization just had a study completed that talks about women and their the single moms working and what it takes to just support. Did you want to say just a couple words? Some of those statistics are astounding.
The Women's Foundation completed a study that looked at what it costs a family of a given configuration to get by, and found that many families are spending more for child care than they are for rent, and that even families that are making more than the federal poverty limit are struggling to make ends meet. And so investing in women and paying them fairly will be a huge economic driver.
You can also go to aauw.org and find lots of information about not only Equal Pay Day, but the statistics on women's pay nationwide.
Thank you very much, ladies.
Madam Chair. I would just add that as a part of this item and our approval of it, I'd like to ask Mr. Huckleberry to see if we can work on putting together an internal pay evaluation for Pima County, so we can take a look at how wages are structured throughout Pima County and start to deal with these issues as well for ourselves.
You beat me to the punch. I was just going to do that.
Didn't let you get back, Sharon. Sorry about that.
All right, that's okay.
Chair.
Thank you. All right, thank you all of you who have received proclamations today. We appreciate the service you give to Pima County. I want to, since we're on the addendum agenda, I want to move to item 4, mitigation impacts Kinder Morgan Sierra Rita pipeline. I received a call last night, and I think Mr. Huckleberry did also, asking for a continuation from Kinder Morgan. Mr. Huckleberry, do you have any comments specifically on this item? What is your recommendation?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, last night I received a call from the representative of Kinder Morgan and requesting that the item be continued, and I would suggest if we continue it, you continue it to the first meeting in May with the understanding that Kinder Morgan will continue to work with not only Pima County but the ranchers in the Altar Valley to minimize the impacts of this particular pipeline. I think you also received last night, and even if some of you picked it up this morning, a very long and lengthy letter from Kinder Morgan, their president, and it's about 13 pages, and I finally found someone who can write longer letters than I do. Many of the points in the letter I think I would probably agree with if we were dealing with an alignment that was parallel to State Route 286 and largely within the right-of-way that's already at a disturbed corridor in the Altar Valley. What the letter fails to understand is that we're dealing with a completely separate corridor at the request of the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, who are the operators of Buenos Aires. And what they've effectively done is caused the pipeline alignment to be placed along its western boundary of the wildlife refuge. That really creates a second corridor, and therefore all of the mitigation issues that we've raised in our letters and in our comments to FERC and their impact statements and their development of impact statements. So I would welcome a dialogue with the president of Kinder Morgan, and hopefully the individual can be available when the board considers this again, if you do continue it. And I think the only other issue that I find a little concerning is the fact that in the letter it relies on FERC, the federal agency, with regard to mitigation. And some of the mitigation issues that we continue to point out are pretty obvious to most, and what I'd like to do is just pass out a picture that was in the Arizona Daily Star some time ago. And what you see in this picture is the Kinder Morgan pipeline and its mitigation in the Cienega Creek area.
On the, yeah.
Yeah, we can put it up there. The picture tells 1,000 words with regard to mitigation. And this is a pipeline that was rebuilt and enlarged in Pima County 7 years ago. And you see the state of the mitigation. It effectively there isn't any. And so that's our concern with leaving mitigation to a federal agency. It frankly doesn't happen. I think the other thing that's most concerning now is the same federal agency, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, who said the pipeline cannot go parallel to State Route 286 and required it to go around the refuge, is now saying that it's perfectly compatible for the refuge to have Kinder Morgan use the crossroads, those dirt roads that connect State Route 286 and this proposed pipeline. They're talking about improving those roads, grading those roads, causing even more impacts to the natural environment. So we're really getting an answer from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that is inconsistent with their first determination. So that's very concerning that we would have that kind of answer, and the kind of response that we've gotten now from Kinder Morgan makes it even more perplexing. They seem to rely on the fact that they're going to pay property taxes as any utility would in Pima County, and that those would more than offset the impacts. Well, those property taxes for other purposes.
Property taxes, but that is on a depreciated asset, and isn't they? My understanding is they're using some method of accelerated depreciation, so that those tax base will decline over time, while maybe I'm mistaken, our needs will increase over time.
Madam Chair, that's absolutely correct. Centrally assessed utility and their asset will be depreciable, and so the value is based on the depreciated asset. Most use accelerated depreciation. When you look at the obligations of the county, for example, we've talked about, and this illustrates the corridor. We've talked about the need to mitigate this second corridor coming from the border. While we can manage State Route 286 because it's contiguous and you see who's on it, what we're effectively doing is creating another vehicular corridor a few miles west of 286 for smuggling and the things that occur with regard to what the sheriff is doing with his border unit all the time along the border. And so the sheriff's costs that are imputed into this mitigation package aren't going to decline over time. They're not going to depreciate. They're going to inflate, and so they're going to grow. And so I think that's what makes the communication a little disconcerting, is the fact that there's little realization of the reality of the impact that this particular facility will have on Pima County. And lastly, I think we owe it to our partners in the Altar Valley and the ranchers to continue to support their activities and their interest, and they continue to be opposed to this pipeline without adequate mitigation. And I think the mitigation that's being offered by Kinder Morgan to the ranching community in Altar Valley is entirely inadequate.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Miller.
Mr. Huckleberry, I had a question for you. Did the Fish and Wildlife Service give us any rationale for their decision did we have any input or any feedback from them on this?
Madam Chair and Supervisor Miller, we requested information, we requested reconsideration. They have a process that they call the internal consistency, in which the federal rules allow them to make a decision without public notice, without public process, without anything, and they just made that decision to support their wildlife refuge manager, even though in other locations in this country there has been pipelines that have been through wildlife refuges with adequate mitigation. And we felt all along that this is the best route, least impact, least environmentally damaging alternative, but we were frankly ignored by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Elias.
You know, I have great concerns about this, and frankly, I had concerns before we received this letter last night. And after reading through 13 pages of intense denial, I have even more concerns about it. There's serious denial of mitigation standards that are appropriate for this type of intrusion into real estate in Pima County. Absolutely no regard for those roads that Mr. Huckleberry talked about that will be not only cut in new places but maintained in new places. That is going to seriously change the landscape there in the Altar Valley. This is a region that's particularly volatile to all of us as well. When the issue of public safety costs and costs with our sheriff were brought up in relation to immigration as well. Again, a complete denial about the whole cost of all of that. I think it's important that we get some cost analysis from the Border Patrol as well, who are not included in these questions, because this is opening an entire new corridor, roadway in that area that has been particularly volatile and had a number of immigration corridors in it. But even worse, those corridors have resulted in vigilantism that has cost the county a ton of money as well, trying to control. And so the cost of all of that need to be incorporated and calculated into any kind of agreement we have. So I think the agreement that we have on the table leaves us pretty short, to be quite honest. And that's not really delving into the intricacies of the cultural resources of the Tohono O'odham people, who have the Babakiwiri Mountains as their most sacred places in their existence. They will be deeply affected by this pipeline that's basically going in at the foot of that set of mountains. That is a serious problem for us as well. That needs to be addressed somehow with the nation, and with a certain amount of understanding from Pima County, who also works to protect the cultural resources of the Tohono O'odham Nation. That's a mutual thing that we've agreed to and we've always conducted. The seriousness of this matter cannot be blown off or changed easily with a letter that says that all of this is untrue. It looks to me that if we want to extend this matter until the first meeting in May, that's an okay start, but I'm not sure that we can complete all the work that needs to be done on this by that first meeting in May. So I would say that we want to hear back from Mr. Huckleberry before that first meeting to make sure that these meetings have gone as well as they could have, and that we come up with some kind of agreement, because I'd hate to have us come up with another 13-page letter the night before a meeting. As you can see, they're not here today. We haven't really had a great deal of conversation with these folks as it is. This is a serious problem, and let me tell you one more thing. Kinder Morgan and those pipelines have an immense amount of power. In District 5, we had a Kinder Morgan gas line burst, and it doused 6 homes that were under construction over there by Silverbell and Grant with gasoline. Kinder Morgan was never able to tell us how much gasoline was lost in that event. I don't know about you guys, but when I go buy gas, they know how much down to the last penny goes in that car down that tube. So it seems to me they ought to be able to figure out how much gas went out that big pipeline when it popped. So, recognizing that there's federal regulatory authority over pipelines, the Office of Pipeline Safety decided to fine Kinder Morgan for that accident that took place on Silver Bowl and Grant. The amount of the fine was $35,000. Pima County was fined $1 million for a catastrophic sewer collapse that ended up sending some raw sewage down a storm drain and into the Santa Cruz River. We were fined $1 million for that. There's some basic inequities here, is what I'm saying. And these are very, very powerful people. This letter of denial strikes a very bad chord for the future and how we can best work together to mitigate the effects of this pipeline. We might need more than May 1, but I'm willing to delay at least for a period of time, because I think it's our obligation to talk about this, because I don't think we have everything included in here that needs to be included.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Carroll.
Madam Chair, I'd second the motion for a delay to May 1. I'm not sure if that
Or the
isn't.
first meeting in May. What day is that? May 6th.
I'm not exactly sure that's going to be enough time either. I'm certainly flexible to look at it then. I appreciate one thing, Supervisor Elias having had experience in his district. I bet a lot of people in this room would appreciate the idea that you can only judge a horse by its track record. And on this one, Supervisor Elias, you have my attention, and I'm certainly willing to support your delay.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. I have a comment. We got this. I actually didn't see it till I got in this morning. It was sent last night, and it has, the position of Kinder Morgan hasn't changed from day one that I can tell. They are requesting a meeting, and I did not have the letter in front of me when I got the call requesting the continuance. I find that very disingenuous. I am also alarmed after reading the letter how in the letter the Altar Valley Conservation Alliance is basically ignored. Our cost to Pima County for mitigation issues is grossly underestimated. They were requesting a meeting with the Board of Supervisors, I think prior to any meeting with the Board of Supervisors, which will be an open meeting by law, that Kinder Morgan needs to sit down with all the stakeholders, as Mr. Huckleberry has indicated, and those include the Altar Valley Conservation Alliance. They include, I think if we can get members of the nation as it relates to the cultural resources, as well as the Sonoran Desert Protection Coalition. These are all stakeholders in this process and should be at the table. I think the other entity that needs, besides Kinder Morgan, to be at the table in those discussions is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and I'm hoping that perhaps we can get a representative from Congressman Grijalva's office at any meetings or talks that do take place. And if you would condition your motion on that, I would be happy to support it.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I agree to those conditions to my motion.
Supervisor Carroll, are you?
Madam Chair, I agree.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor with direction then.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Miller.
I just wanted to comment. It was the Kinder Morgan requested this continuance. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right.
There's a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Any objections? Motion carries. We'll continue till the first meeting in May, which is May 6th. And I know we have several speakers who were here. We've got copies of the Kinder Morgan letter if you'd like to look at it. Thank you. Moving back to, do we want to take a break now, or do we? Okay, we'll take about a 10-minute break and then we'll return at the sound of the gavel. Give our folks I'd like to reconvene the board meeting if we could get the supervisors to their seats. All right, we are moving back to the regular agenda. Item number 6, we don't have any executive session, so we will move then to Board of Supervisors sitting as other boards, the Flood Control District Board, contract with U.S. Department of the Interior Geological Survey. What's the pleasure of the board?
Approval. Madam Chair, I'll go ahead and move item 6.
Somebody just did. Was it?
Oh,
wait,
did you?
yeah.
I couldn't hear. I'm sorry. I apologize. Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Do I hear objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to the consent calendar as amended. Call to the public. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address us on any item on the consent calendar? If not, what's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair, did you have something? Go ahead, Supervisor.
Supervisor Miller.
Madam Chair, I move to approve consent calendar.
In its entirety as amended?
Yes.
Motion and a second to approve a consent in its entirety as amended. Discussion, objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to Sheriff, item number 9, transfer of ownership and title of vehicle. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve item 9. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion
Madam
carries.
Chair.
Supervisor Carroll.
I just want to say a big thank you to the Sheriff's Department for participating in the request of the Southern Arizona Rescue Association. I've met recently with the board members of Southern Arizona Rescue, and times are tough over there, and they appreciate this donation of a former vehicle used by the Sheriff's Department. And I want to say thank you to all the volunteers and board members of the Southern Arizona Rescue Association. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Supervisor Carroll. There were no objections, so motion carries. Moving on to hearings, licenses, franchises, permits. Item 10, it's a liquor license. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address the board on this item? If not, what's pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Elias.
I'll move item 10, a liquor license for Daniel Dominic Scordado Vivace Restaurant, and close public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to item 11, items 11A and B. These are amendments to county bond ordinances and bond program updates relating to ordinance number 2014 and ordinance 2014-14 and 2014-15. We have a number of speakers. Mr. Huckleberry, comments before I call the speakers up.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, or Madam Chair, this is the members of the board. This is the standard processes that we go through and use in monitoring and managing the bond programs, and what you have before you are modifications to a number of the projects made necessary during implementation. The project that you'll probably want to have a separate discussion on is a one under 2004 program called the 4.31 Northside Community Center, and that is the current amendment that has been recommended to the board by the mayor and council with regard to amending the allocation of those funds to further improvements at Reito, and that's probably what you'll have many of the speakers on today. Let me hit first the modifications that for the balance of the program are all relatively modest and straightforward. I don't think there's many discussions that you're going to have on those, and it's how you'd like to proceed with regard to hearing the public's testimony on project 4.31, and if you'd like, staff can answer questions as we go along.
Okay, and then the sewer revenue bonds, I don't have any speakers on that item that I'm aware of. Is there anyone in the audience that is here for item 11B, an ordinance 2014-15? If not, can we act on that one now? 2014. This is SOAR.
Madam Chair, seeing that there's no one in the audience that wishes to speak.
Oh, is it B? Okay. Oh, it's okay. It's not just the SOAR. It's A that's not at question. Okay, my mistake. Thank you. So ordinance 2014-14, the 1997 bond implementation plan. What's pleasure of the board on that item?
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Carroll.
Seeing that there's no one to speak on ordinance number 2014-14, 11A under County Administrator, I'd like to close the public hearing and move to approve the amendments to county bond ordinances and program update.
Motion and a second to approve ordinance 2014-14. Discussion? Objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Now we'll move on to item 11B in ordinance 2014-15. We have a number of speakers. I want to remind you, when you come up to the podium, please give us your name. You're limited to 3 minutes, and with that, I will call the first individual, Mark White.
Hi, how are you? My name is Mark White. I represent the Pima County Horsemen's Association, and we currently lease the Rito racetrack, and we currently run it. What I'd like to do is, if this bond is approved, I'd like to present a park design that would allow the highest and best use of the facility for horse racing, soccer, and special events. It is recognized during the average use per activity, the facility can accommodate 4,500 spectators without exceeding the parking capacity. Special action must be taken when the number of spectators is exceeded. This can be done by using every available space on the grounds with special directions, and only if the spectators are willing to walk. It has been done by PCHA during racing when accommodating as many as 10,000 spectators. Also, people have been transported in or cars parked in the infield for spring fling or other special events. This new plan allows maximum use of the facility or land for all activities. It would not be beneficial to develop the park beyond this design. Spectators and participants require parking. Parking is also required by Pima County with reference to businesses and public access. To develop this park or demolish this historical facility in order to accommodate new construction would lead to a non-functional horse racing facility. Soccer and special events will be next because there will be no parking. Why create a problem such as a parking garage or off-site parking when it's not necessary, especially when the money is not there for new construction? Thank you for your time. So I'd like to give you each a copy of this and for your consideration.
That's the plans. You're welcome, since that is not particularly on this item, but you're welcome if you want to, after we finish with this item, if you want to do a presentation and call to the public, you could come back and do it at that point, depending on your time constraints. Yeah, I was wondering what was in that nice green bag.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Patty Shirley.
I'm Patty Shirley, Vice President of the Pima County Horsemen's Association. I was really hoping some other people would speak first so that I would have something to speak to, but...
You're always good at speaking to people, Patty.
Thank you, Chairman Bronson. Our concern, the Pima County Horsemen's concern with the plan to destroy the barns on the west end and hopefully build new ones on the east end, we're concerned about the destruction because of the historic significance of those barns. We're concerned about the reconstruction because they will be reconstructed in our parking. Now, we've been told this isn't going to impact racing. Well, now, y'all may not be horse racing fans, but you are business people. Now, tell me that you can have a business and take away its parking and that business can continue to thrive. It cannot happen. If you are going to go out for dinner and you have choice A, this restaurant that has lovely parking, or you have to walk a mile and a half to get into this other restaurant, you will not go to the other restaurant. Since we only have one horse racing facility in all of southern Arizona, we need to make it customer friendly, consumer friendly, business friendly, so that people can get to this facility that they want to visit. And we're very, very concerned about the constraints that will be placed on us if our parking lot is taken. And there's no way that those barns can be built as intended without taking up over half of our parking places. I'm told that a parking garage costs $14 million. I don't think any of you have that in your pockets to pass out. We need this plan that Mark has that you have not had an opportunity to look at is good for you, because I believe in reading the Daily Star that Pima County has come under a lot of criticism for all the money they spend improperly. We think this will save you all a lot of money because it's going to cost a fortune to tear down the barns. It's not cheap to demolish. Demolition isn't cheap. It's going to cost another fortune to rebuild. So if we can help you out along those lines and help ourselves as well, we would really appreciate that. And I want you to know we have never been opposed to soccer. We are opposed to soccer putting us out of business. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Elias.
Number one, I'm not really aware of any improper spending that Pima County has done. People question some of the things we do, but I have not heard of any improper spending that we do. However, Mr. Huckleberry, I'd like you to respond to the speaker's comments about the barns on the west side, the parking issues related to it, and what exactly is the current plan for that?
Yes, Madam Chair and Supervisor Elias, I think what you're looking at and what we have indicated to everyone, this is the third phase of improvements at Rillito, and as these improvements continue over time, the improvements are basically creating a public park out of the Rillito racetrack facility. First authorized in 1997, bonds approved by the voters for certain soccer improvements at the facility. Additional funding was authorized in 2004, and those improvements have been installed. This is the third round of improvements that go and address increasing soccer capacity at the facility. And it arises out of an allocation that was made to the city of Tucson. So what we're really talking about is this third allocation of bond funding that makes further improvements to soccer, but begins to displace existing facilities that are on Rillito, specifically the barns on the west side. And a portion of those barns are not occupied now because they were damaged in a previous windstorm. The reason that we're looking at the west side is simply because we also need to develop what we call flood detention and retention basins because of something called racetrack wash that comes through the middle of Rillito. We're perfectly willing to look at any other alternative that anyone wants to propose, including the one that Mark White just provided us. We will look at that. I think there's been this concept that we're rushing to tear down the barns so that we can, permanently put out business horse racing, and that's not true. we've said from time to time, and every time we're asked, we said that we will not do anything until after the 2014 racing season. That's been interpreted as that we're going to go tear down the barns tomorrow. We're not. And what we will be doing is looking at any reasonable alternative that anybody wants to bring forward to us that allows an alternative to be put in place that continues to expand the capacity at Rito for public park use, and that includes county fair horse racing. We anticipate that county fair horse racing will probably continue from, say, today of this last season to more than likely through 2018, and because there'll be another public vote on Rito, and the other public vote is now being under consideration by the Pima County Bond Advisory Committee that would add an additional bonding allocation to complete the transition from its present condition as a park to then full soccer complex development. But that has to be voted on by a bond issue that could be on the ballot as early as November 15. Now, we have also said on numerous occasions that we're perfectly willing to look at and even go back and recommend different alternatives to the Bond Advisory Committee, provided that we can ensure the facility is multiple use. And multiple use means, yes, we've looked at an alternative. We looked at one alternative that's been well documented, and we can pull it out and look at it again. And I asked the very simple question: can the grandstands be retained in their present location, retain the track configuration as it is, and have those grandstands used as multiple use for soccer tournament facilities? And the answer comes back no, because they're too far away from the playing field. We just built a new soccer tournament complex on Keno, and so we could do that, but we have to come to the realization, everybody does, that we're going to have to rebuild the grandstand closer to the playing surfaces and closer to the running surfaces. It takes out the patio area in front of the present grandstands. But that's a bond issue, and we've not had many people talk about that as a joint use facility for soccer tournament complex as well as retaining horse racing. We also know that there are several competing entities now with regard to leasing the facility for future county fair horse racing, and that they may have other concepts or plans. And again, we will look at those. And I think in order to allay everybody's fears that we're going to, once the board acts, if the board acts or if you want to act on the proposed amendment, we're going to go out and destroy the barns and proceed with the phased improvements that we planned. We do not have any contracts to do that. We don't have any specific plans. We're just now beginning that planning process to what occurs. Happy to involve everyone in the process, including the soccer interest in that process, so that everybody has a decision or an input into the decision. And ultimately, whatever we do, we're going to have to bring right back to this Board of Supervisors for your ultimate approval and direction. So that may help lay the foundation for what we have as additional speakers and what the county plans. And the county plans at this time are, I think, pretty much as outlined in that discussion.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Carroll.
Madam Chair, I'd like to ask Mr. Huckleberry again. When it came to Patty Shirley's comments, their lease is up in 2 years, am I right, Mr. Huckleberry? Southern Arizona Horsemen's Association.
Madam Chair and Supervisor Carroll, it's the Pima County Horsemen's Association. Their lease is up now.
Their lease is already up, so they're on a month-to-month over there.
No, I think we're going up with
there
an
has to be a
RFP.
new request for proposals for leasing of the facility, which has been preparation now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Carroll. We'll proceed with the speakers. And I apologize. I failed to recognize, as we started this meeting, the supervisor who I replaced, Supervisor Ed Moore. Supervisor Moore, please come to the podium.
I have a green bag that I did not bring up.
Thank you.
There are two things that you need to pay attention to. That initiative that the heavy majority of the voters approved in 1984 is still alive and well. Do not listen to anybody who says it is expired. Section 1 dealt with general issues dealing with the Rito racetrack. Section 2 dealt with commercial horse racing. Because remember, Pima County fired 1,800 people when they terminated the racetrack lease. You can go back to the number of licenses held at the track at that point. At the same time, Section 3 of the initiative dealt with county fair racing. So 2 and 3 have expired because the 25 years for those two types of racing are over. Section 4 is still alive and well, and Section 5 forces the county to recognize the history of that particular track. Mo Udall suggested that this initiative be written. I can give you the history of that if you want it, but it takes a little bit of time. He said, make sure you put an ordinance in there. And don't put a provision where the county supervisors can vote on it. Look at the very last line in the initiative. It says the Pima County Board of Supervisors cannot do anything about it. That means, and incidentally, Alvin Kreitz, who is no longer with us, agreed with Mo Udall. As you remember, Mo Udall was a county attorney in, I think, 52 and 53. And was fully aware of a number of issues in regard to the Rito racetrack. The history is important. That, in my opinion, is the most important issue. That's the one, if you guys pass something today, I would ask that you publicly delay doing anything to the barns, because if we have to, we will go into court and try and litigate to enforce the provisions of the lease that require you to protect what is there. We think you have to go back to the public if you don't like the particular provisions. Somebody's after me.
No, it's okay. He just dropped his cane.
Anyway, in addition, the decision by the appellate court in Maricopa County last year in the Castle Rock issue was quite definitive. The Supreme Court agreed with the appellate court's published decision. You cannot amend a bond issue without going back to a vote of the people. Now, the law is very clear on that. If we have to litigate that issue also, we're ready, willing to do it. I am not fighting for either of the groups that plan to lease the Raiders or would like to lease it. I'm fighting to preserve the improvements that are there. So, anyway, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Supervisor. Ralph Comey.
Hello, my name is Ralph Comey. I'm a historic architect, and my colleague Janet Parkhurst and I wrote the National Register nomination that put the...
Oh, yeah, we need you to.
Then how do you turn that on?
Pull it down.
To
There
speak
we go.
into it?
Perfect,
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, we wrote the nomination for the Rito racetrack and put it on the National Register a couple years ago. And I just wanted to speak in support of the track. Pima County plans soon to demolish 2 historic horse barns on the Rito racetrack property, add new consolidated barns in one location, and add 3 new soccer fields. This does not make good sense. Currently, there are 4 soccer fields in the infield of the racetrack, 160 more soccer fields in the Tucson area, and a proposed tournament site to the west of town. Moreover, with this change at the track, there will not be sufficient on-site parking. Perhaps more fields are needed, but they should not come at the expense of this historic racetrack. Rito racetrack is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Because official quarter horse racing started here, a portion of the track, the straightaway chute, is listed at the national level of significance. In Tucson, Santa Fe Mission and Tumacock Hill Desert Laboratory are the only other properties listed at this level. So Rita Racetrack is a unique historic property. This racetrack has always enjoyed considerable popular support. During the racing season, large crowds, in good weather often exceeding 5,000 people, attend the weekend races. Tucson no longer has Major League Baseball spring practice. Next year, we may lose match play golf. We are losing top-level sporting events. So Tucson's racing season is important. We urge the Board of Supervisors to support and protect Rita Racetrack.
Thank you, Mr. Comey. Janet Parkhurst.
Members of the Board of Supervisors, I am also a preservation architect. I am Janet Parkhurst, you just heard. I am here sort of for more personal reasons. One is my very good friend, Mary, is the daughter of Mel Haskell, one of the original founders of organized quarter horse racing at the Rito. Very good friend of Jay Rukin-Jelks. And Mary's suffering in poor health right now, and I'm here on her behalf because I know she'd love to be here. I am speaking just on one aspect of the Rito. I almost wished I could have spoken after Ricardo Pineda, the Consul of Mexico, was here this morning. I know of no better agent for cross-border goodwill than the Rito Racetrack. Have you ever been there? Yo hablo español también. I see families all decked out. I talked to people who said they were raised on the racetrack as children because their parents brought them there for their main entertainment. I think this is an irreplaceable resource and, as I said, agent of cross-border goodwill. Please keep that in mind. Please attend the races if you haven't. You'll never have so much fun.
Richard, is it Pasco, Dasco?
Thank you. I'm known as Rick Pasco, P-A-S-K-O, and I live at 13663 North Bushwhacker Place in Oro Valley. Well, I've been, let's see, we bought a house here 5 years ago. I came back. I'm a displaced U of A grad in 1958. I was here when the mountains, you could see them with no houses at the bottom. And you're going to have to excuse me. I have Parkinson's disease. And Parkinson's disease has changed my personality, and sometimes I'll whimper over things I shouldn't be. You wonder why I'm whimpering. Anyway, that's my problem. And I will fight that one, and I'm going to fight it, and I will win, because I do win most of the time, except in this case, I got hit with Parkinson's 6 years ago. And I graduated from U of A in 1958 in advertising and in business. And I'll tell you, I got a good education because I did very, very well in advertising, but not here, up in Seattle. Ran an advertising agency and did quite well. And it was interesting to see the proclamations over today, because I'm a believer that women have been underpaid, too. And if it wasn't for women and their copywriting techniques and all the abilities that they had, I wouldn't be here today in the financial position I'm in. And I've been very, very well. I came here and I why am I here today? Because of Rolita Downs. I got in the horse business some, 40 years from now. 40 years ago when I bought a horse for $2,000 and it won $50,000 for it. And ever since then I've been having horses. It took me 40 years to get to Santa Anita. And I've got one running this Thursday, if you look at it. In the 7th race, her name is Mark of a Gem. And she won. She could be a big one. She's a 4-year-old, and she's going to have the best jockey in the world on her, Mike Smith. And it's an interesting fact. And knowing people in the horse business is quite rewarding to me. Because if you want good citizens, they're going to come from the horses. And looking back when I first got in, everybody, if you've been at the racetrack, you're looking at the front side. You're not seeing the really people who run the racetrack, the people in the backstretch. A typical racetrack, there's about, let's see, in Seattle, we have 500 people back there. We have a cafe. We have a minister. We have a Catholic minister. We have a general minister. And they work together very, very well. And it's like a little city. And basically, if somebody's hurt, you got the HPPA, which is a organization that takes care of the people back there. If they're hurt financially, they'll help them. If they can't buy food, they'll help them. And the little miracles happen back there. And these are in fact, my wife, I prayed for her once, and she's a horsewoman. And she's taking care of me now. She's a caregiver. And what I'd like to do is make this mention. You know, the month of April nationally is going to be Parkinson's Awareness Month. And we're into it now. And I saw nothing in the press here. And it's one of my vocations that I'm going to be doing now in my retirement years, is work towards a Parkinson's activity to get funding for it, because you got one basic person who's pushing it, and it's Michael J. Fox, and doing a great job. In fact, yesterday I received notice from him that they are coming very close to bringing out a drug that could very well delay the progress of the disease. And when you get Parkinson's, the average age it gets is 60 years old, and it's not fun, because once you get it, you're like going to prison for life, and there's no cure for it yet. And there's a lot of it's not fun, really. Anyway, I'm here today because I saw an article in the paper yesterday to say really the Downs. I'm somewhat embarrassed when I walk through Tucson and what you've done to this town. In 1958, it had, the Hockamee's shoe store, department store. Go in there, because the only place to work. I worked there part-time my way through school. I worked on ranches here. I worked with Pat Jenks. He had a 28,000-acre ranch. He's passed now. He's a great gentleman over by Kids Peak. And he leased some land from her and go up there and fix trails every weekend. And it was very, very enjoyable. I enjoyed my life here, and I enjoyed my life outside here. But I came back, and I was somewhat discouraged to see a golf tournament with a purse of $5 million, and now they're not going to be here. And when I was here, I said, well, what's this rodeo that they've got here? Why aren't they supporting the rodeo with more funding?
I think your time has
sorry.
elapsed, but I assume that you're obviously supportive of the track and want to keep
definitely.
it.
Okay. It's national, something that you should keep, and I'd add more money to it. In fact, I was going to go to them and see if we could get some kind of funding for it. Because you know what? If you really look at it, the states of this country took away horse racing from them. It took away farming, hurt the farmers more than they did horse racing. Because the lottery in 1982 almost destroyed horse racing. The attendance there and horse ownership is just depleted. And if you did something, and I was going to go to and did up in Washington, and I'm going to work with this, to see if they could pay back to horsemen through the lottery and raise some funds that way to bring back horse racing.
Thank you so much.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Rowe.
Mr. Pasco, I want to say thank you for your comments, and obviously, horse racing is the #1 spectator sport in the world.
Used to be.
It's close. But I will say that I have been to the racetrack, and but on the other mention that you had there in your comments, the best boss I ever had was Sister Kathleen Clark from Casa de los Niños. I worked for her while she suffered from Parkinson's disease, and I'm glad you reminded us that April is Parkinson's Disease Awareness Month. I have friends that I'll be helping to get this notion out that it's curable, and I'm glad Michael J. Fox communicated with you that something's on the horizon. So I appreciate you coming in today and how much we all agree on so many different items. We'll be happy to meet with you after the agenda is over today officially, and love you as a stakeholder and an idea person for how to make things better in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Carroll. Jeffrey Rogers.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm Jeff Rogers. I'm the Director of Coaching for the Tucson Soccer Academy. I'm also a member of the Arizona Youth Soccer Association's State League Subcommittee. I'm also a liaison for the USYSA, which is the United States Youth Soccer Association's Far West Regional League, and the liaison for Tucson and trying to bring that here. I wanted to talk about the conversion of Rito into soccer fields and specifically into the number of fields that are necessary in order to bring large-scale events. The USYSA has deemed 16 fields as the benchmark for bringing any kind of large event into the area. Currently, we have to travel to Las Vegas, Albuquerque, even Phoenix at times. Last summer, our team that won the state championship had to go to Hawaii in order to participate in the regional championships. And it's always very frustrating for me because I think those events should be here. And they could be if we had a facility. And this has been expressed to us many times by the leadership of the USYSA, of the regional staff. They all recognize Tucson as a beautiful destination for tourism. And I think that what's happened out at Keno, where we built a facility and now the MLS is using that as their preseason, has established that people want to come to Tucson, and especially soccer people. And this is now becoming kind of a focused hub for these events. But until we have a facility that can accommodate the number of teams that we're talking about, and that's what it all comes down to. When you have a youth soccer event with 200, 250 teams, and that's what these have, the economic impact is enormous. And they have to be at one facility from a management standpoint. They won't allow these to be broken up, 6 fields here, 6 fields across the other side of town, 6 fields somewhere else. It's all got to be in one centralized location. So I hope that you will give every consideration to this. Again, the impact will be enormous on it. I'd also like to say that I'm a physical education teacher. I'm certified in elementary school PE. And so I'm very sensitive to the issues that our youth are facing right now, of course, of the sedentary lifestyles that so many of them have, and the opportunities that we're trying to present to them to be active, to get outside, to participate in helpful, life-affirming activities. And that's ultimately what soccer is providing for these kids. And what's beautiful about soccer is, again, that it bridges these socioeconomic backgrounds and ethnic backgrounds. It brings kids from all diversity together. And it's very inexpensive to play relative to some of the other sports. And I think that we all, as the leadership of our community, have a responsibility to these kids to provide these opportunities for them, in addition to the other side of it, which is the economic impact that it will bring. So for me, it's a win-win situation, that if you were to convert Rito into 16 fields, make it a quality facility, not only are you improving the facilities available to our youth, but you're also enabling large-scale events to come to Tucson and improve the economic impact of that.
Thank you.
You forgot one thing. You're interested in co-locating soccer and horse racing at Rito. Is this correct?
That is correct.
You're willing and participating in a project that's going to bring both a lasting home and a mutually
Absolutely.
beneficial arrangement?
I'd like to say that I'm from Tucson. I was raised here. I've spent my entire life in Tucson. I did go off and I was a professional soccer player for 11 years, and then I returned. And I recognize that horse racing is an important part of our culture. And I don't think any of us in the soccer community want to see horse racing go away. That is not our ambition. Just as they state, their ambition is not to make soccer go away. And I think we all want there to be a coexistence. We just have to look at the realities of limited space, limited resources, and try and figure out the best way to best serve everyone.
Thanks, Mr. Rogers. I
Thank you.
appreciate listening to you say that. The other thing is, I was at the TSA Ann Schmidt Clubhouse opening. You guys did a fabulous job there. You took what was a real hovel and turned it into a house and gardens facility for the pride of Pima County and the soccer clubs that meet there and benefit from the homework help and all the other amenities that are offered. So in blessed memory, I say thanks to Ann Schmidt, Ted Schmidt, and all the people that helped you at that TSA facility. It's really top drawer. If people haven't been there and understood the kind of work that you do, and like you said, you don't need to have a silver spoon in your mouth when you're born. You don't need a club tie to be a member of that club. You just have to have a desire to kick up some dirt and work your soccer skills till you get to a high school or college that finds your skills something that they'd want on their team. I appreciate also you being a professional from Tucson and coming home here. Nice job on your career. But most of all, thanks again for being here and speaking out. And obviously, you're outnumbered today, sir, but I'm glad to hear you say that you're more than willing to lay down any animosity and move towards a mutual beneficial coexistence in the Rito corridor for soccer and horse racing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those kind words. I really
Madam
appreciate
Chair?
it.
Supervisor Miller.
I'd just like to ask Mr. Rogers a few questions. Have you seen this concept that was drawn up?
Yes, I have.
And it's got 11 soccer fields. I'm just looking at, how we could possibly get 16 soccer fields on there. I don't know if is there other area that I'm not seeing that exists?
Mr. Huckleberry.
Yes, Madam Chair and Supervisor Miller, there's a final phase improvement, which is a $14 million additional investment that is before the Bond Advisory Committee that would add the other fields. It basically requires the removal of the horse racing facilities.
Jim Cosby. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Good comments. I appreciate
it. I'm Jim Cosby from Sonoyta, and I'm here basically wearing 3 hats. First of all, I am president of the Santa Cruz County Fairgrounds down in Sonoyta. Also, I'm the 3rd year chairman for the Sonoyta horse races, which are coming up Kentucky Derby weekend in about 3 weeks. And finally, I'm a board member of the Arizona County Racing Association. And so 3 hats. I want to speak basically on one thing, and that is, of course, every action, it is well known, causes a reaction, or every cause causes an effect. And a little history here. In 2010, the Arizona State Legislature cut what was known as betterment funding. This was funding that was given to all the county racetrack, rodeo and racetrack facilities, county fairs. And those funds were used to support horse racing in Arizona on the county level. That funding dried up. What was the effect or the reaction? 1 year later, there were 12 statewide county racing facilities that could not provide racing. That has happened then. the next year, and then this is the 4th year that no county racing has occurred, with the exception of Sonoyta, Santa Cruz County. That is an actual action-reaction. We're now looking at a potential action of the possible altering of the Rito track so that horse racing possibly will no longer be viable in Pima County. Okay? What is the reaction? The reaction is threefold. Number one, you must know that approximately 2/3 of the horses that come to Santa Cruz County to race at the Sonoyta meet come after Rito's meet is finished. The bottom line is no Rito horses means no horses coming to Sonoyta, which means Sonoyta racetrack closes. And the bottom line, if you take it one step further, since racing is the primary funding source for Santa Cruz County Fairgrounds, our facility is in jeopardy of its ultimate existence. The second thing you need to know is that the racetrack industry program at the University of Arizona has been using both Rito and...
Sir, your time has expired. Could you wrap up quickly?
Okay. The bottom line, I guess, is money. County racing in Arizona, if that disappears and becomes extinct, in effect, we will be losing statewide up to 5,000 jobs, $110 million in income to households, and $19 million in revenues to state and local governments. So horse racing decisions in Pima County certainly affect horse racing throughout Arizona.
Sir, if you have the remarks written, you're welcome to submit them to the clerk and we'll put them on.
I basically just have it in outline form.
Okay,
thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Kurt Luscombe.
Good morning. My name is Kurt Luscombe. I guess we answered the coexistence question. They tear down the racetrack, soccer and racing can't coexist. We have a unique situation in Pima County in that we have an operational racetrack that sits on county land. I think it's a great opportunity that we may be throwing away. It was gifted to the county in the 70s. There's 8 soccer fields now in use, and your plan is to demolish the entire historic district by 2018. To build 16, that's what Mr. Huckleberry
I would ask
said.
Mr. Huckleberry to correct that statement before you
Please
go on
correct
with
that.
your comments.
Yes. Madam Chair and Supervisor Elias, what I said is that the current plan, which is the 3rd phase of improvements, would be a future bond issue in 2015 that would complete and add a number of fields to 16. And in that phase, if it in fact is approved, shows that the racing facilities would be demolished and removed. What I've also said is that we have been perfectly open to any coexisting use that can improve the multiple use of the facilities. Right now, there is limited multiple use, particularly of the grandstand facilities. The only way in which you can improve that use is to ensure the grandstand facilities are used for soccer tournaments or other facilities. No one has yet come forward with any particular plan or alternative to how to reuse those facilities or reuse that configuration and retain the existing track configuration so that horse racing can continue, but the use can be more multiple use than it is today. And we're open to those alternatives, but the Bond Advisory Committee and others and other committees have previously made decisions with regard to how to proceed, and so we're kind of getting at the end of that process. So if there's a viable alternative that's going to come forward, it needs to come forward relatively soon.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that you got that this has got to go, if there's any changes that would end racing, essentially it's got to be approved by the voters via any changes in bond. As it stands right now, racing's going to go on there for a long time, okay? How we go about doing that is, excuse me, sir?
I don't believe you.
You don't believe me? Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, let me continue. Do I get my 3 minutes again?
Yeah, we stopped at the clock.
Okay, thank you. So we have this unique situation. The problem I see is putting soccer fields at the Rito racetrack is ill-conceived. There's not enough room to have 16 fields and parking as per the memorandums of Mr. Huckleberry. And in order to build it, you're going to have to put a parking garage in there. So let's go about the costs that we have into the project now and what it's going to cost to put these 16 fields there. There's about $5 million in improvements, which are the existing soccer fields and the repairs that were done to the grandstand. There's $12 million that you're going to throw away in the replacement cost of the Rito racetrack, and that's a conservative estimate. There's $5.25 million that you're voting on today to do the demolition of the barns and move the barns, which indeed, if the track is closed down, all the money you spent to move the barns is wasted, and I calculated at $700,000 or $800,000. There's $14 million in the 2015 bond proposed to finish the project, and there'll be another $14 million to put in a parking garage. So if you add that up quickly, it's $50 million for 16 soccer fields. You need to justify this expenditure for 16 soccer fields to the taxpayers, to the voters, to the horsemen, to the race fans, to the historical fans, and to the voters. I think the best thing to do is leave Rito Racetrack exactly as it is and find another piece of property, build an 18-field national tournament site for youth soccer, and retain the project that we have out there now. I think you need to leave Rito Racetrack as it is. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Luscombe. Stephanie, Supervisor Elias.
Madam Chair, you know, I can respect everybody's opinion on this particular subject, and I think it's important, and I think it's important that we come up with a good, appropriate, multi-purpose use for this facility, to be quite honest. That includes horse racing. But I'd be very careful about people who spread misinformation in public without regard for what information is in truth and fact. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Mabin. Renewal of the lease, for Eurito. Call to the public. All right, sorry. Alex Lee.
Thank you very much. My name's Alex Lee. I'm Jack Goodman's grandson. I wanted to speak today.
Oh, and John Goodman's next, so you're going to follow him.
Perfect. Well, he'll do a better job than I will. I thought that I had a unique perspective in the fact that I grew up here in town, played soccer all of my life till I got to high school, and switched to football and received a football scholarship to college. I owe soccer a lot in this town, but the Rito racetrack, I believe, is worth so much more than soccer. There's so few things for young people to go see horses and something of that grandeur. I grew up working for Fred Fry because I loved all things equine, and I worked in those barns that we're talking about tearing down, moving sawdust in and out. There's a very few options for children to see horses and be around that, and I hold it so dear to my heart that I got to go with my grandfather on weekends, and I think that moving those barns to where the parking is a slide in the wrong direction of taking something away from the track. It's hard enough as it is for the track to make a go of it, and to have is not in the best interest of Rito Racetrack. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. John Goodman.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I first came to Tucson in 1935 when my father bought the Santa Rita Hotel and the Valley Bank. And I went to Evans School, boarding school there, and after World War II, I came back to Tucson, and I've lived in the same home off Camino Real since 1947. So I have a real interest in the community. I'm also the only Arizonan that's a member of the Jockey Club, which is the breed registry for thoroughbred horses in the United States. I owned a horse that very few Americans ever achieved, and that was winning the Grand National in England at Aintree, 4.5 miles over 30 jumps in yes, that was 1964. And all my interest really in racing to Rukin Jokes, Bob Locke, Clancy Wallard, and Jake Meyer, who were really the founders of Rito. Now, and to me, it would be like tearing down, really, the cathedral to build a shopping center. And I can only say that it's a historic place. It goes back into Arizona and into racing. It has provided, I was one of the founders of the School of Racetrack Management at the University of Arizona, which has brought millions of dollars to the university in donations, and many, many people into the racing industry. And certainly Rito has been a part of that, employing those students when they were going to school there to learn the trade. I can only urge to please give it very, very serious consideration. I think soccer is great. Don't misunderstand me. I played it when I was a kid. But I also think horse racing is great. And I don't want to see something that is like Arizona's Churchill Downs, where the Kentucky Derby is run, destroyed. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for your patience. Gary Davidson is our final speaker.
Madam Chair, members of the board, my name is Gary Davidson, 3567 East Sunrise. I didn't bring any charts today. The last time I was before you 3 years ago, I had a lot of charts and went through a lot of information. I was obviously very persuasive since I lost 5-0 on my recommendation to support the Parks Commission rental suggestion. Mr. Huckleberry had a rental suggestion that was much more reduced, and you supported that. I went through the business aspects that day. Of course, I'd be happy to answer any questions on that if you're interested. But today, I kind of want to go back to the basics. 8 years ago now, in '06, the Rito Regional Planning Committee that had members that spoke today in favor of the horse racing facility at Rito. We came up with a unanimous recommendation that was accepted by the board unanimously to move horse racing out of Rito and convert it to a full-time park with fields. And I should say they're soccer fields, but there's also been football tournaments there, there's rugby tournaments there, they're suitable for lacrosse also. So this goes across all sports. I will also take you back to the fact that if you look in our community, and this is what the leadership of our community has created over the years, not me, if you look between Oracle and Craycroft, north of Broadway, there's almost no parks. There's 11 high schools or students from 11 high schools in that area. And I did not create that situation. I'm just trying to remedy it. And I think this is an excellent way to remedy it. If you put 16 fields there, you can provide local access for the kids. And listening today, I heard you doing awards for Global Youth Services Day, Youth HIV AIDS Awareness Day, Youth Week in Pima County. And I urge you to do something for the young people in Pima County. This is an area, there's no other land available. The city has already confirmed that, and that's what you're dealing with today. But I urge you to go ahead, add these fields. We'll address the other issue, as was stated before, to Supervisor Elias's question at a later time. Remember, these fields need to be accessible to people who have to get to practice, the kids that live in this area. Many of them with single moms. That came up before. They have a real tough time getting to practice. So if you put a facility way on the west side or whatever, it won't work. Do it where the kids are. Thank you very much for your attention.
Now, Mr. Davidson,
Sure.
You're also a member of the Bond Advisory Committee.
I am.
And this ordinance, this change, these amendments are being brought, and they have been approved by the Bond Advisory Committee?
They have. It was requested by the city that we make that change. We did make that change. And if you'd like to go into the details of why that was, I'd be happy to. But yes, we've approved that.
Okay. Are there any further questions for Mr. Davidson? If not, thank you, Mr. Davidson. That concludes our speakers. What's the pleasure of the board on our item 11B, ordinance 2014-15? Supervisor Elias.
I'm going to go ahead and move item 11B, including now into item ordinance 2014-15. This does not commence the destruction of any of the facilities there at Rito, but complete some work that needs to be done. Again, we are willing to continue conversations regarding this issue. Horse racing is not a dead issue there at Rito. Neither are the other uses that exist there as well. So I think this is something that moves us forward. We have heard your voices. We want to continue hearing your voices, but we also want to make sure that we're sharing accurate information with each other so that we don't become further misinformed and add fuel to what is sure to be a very difficult issue for our community to confront. So I'm going to go ahead and move, like I said, item 11B, including ordinance 2014-15.
Close the hearing.
Close the hearing.
Is there a second? Motion and a second. I would ask the county administrator, we've heard from a number of people. I think they've made some very good points. I think Mr. Goodman concluding remarks were exemplary. I would hope that as we move forward, should this pass, that we can have a dialogue with all the interested parties prior to any a recommendation from the bond committee regarding a new election. Clearly, we've got some work ahead of us in all respects, but this has been approved by the bond committee, and I think we need to move forward. Are there any other comments, discussion? Supervisor Miller.
Madam Chair, I just had a question. Passing this ordinance, does this begin the destruction of the barns that aren't in use currently?
Madam Chair and Supervisor Miller, what we have indicated that that what this does is accept the city's recommendation to build more soccer facilities on the site. Part of the current plan does call for those barns on the west side to be removed, but what I have indicated orally in the presentation is that before we do anything to destroy those barns, we will come back to this board with a plan that says, here's either what we can do or what we can't do, and ultimately it'll be this board's decision.
Thank you.
Any further comments? If not, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the addendum agenda. Item 5, Economic Development and Tourism, Southern Arizona Raceway LLC. Thank you, gentlemen, for your patience in waiting here today. What's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair,
Supervisor.
I move to approve item 5 on the agenda, on the addendum, Southern Arizona Raceway to provide a ground lease agreement at the Southeast Regional Park for a motorsports raceway attraction.
Motion and a second to approve item 5, Southern Arizona Raceway LLC. Objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to item 6, Bond Advisory Committee. Appointment of Edward Buster. Motion and a second to approve. Objections? Hearing none, motion carries. We're now at call to the audience. Mary Murphy.
Good morning, board. We're such good friends, I always forget to introduce myself, but we have people here in the audience. I am Mary Murphy from Green Valley. And I want to let everybody know what I was up to last night. My new post, 66 American Legion post. I was representing everyone at Tucson International Airport to greet the honor flight, bringing our World War II veterans back from Washington, D.C. And I hope to do it again real soon. Post 66 sent a couple of guys. I'm friends with a gentleman in Sarita that was on the trip. They need money, always, now to get these guys going. At times a wasting. Does Pima County have any kind of matching funds for anything that's raised for Honor Flight Tucson? That's the .com or .org. I'm not sure what it is. It's Honor Flight Tucson. And I was blessed to be with them, and by doing so, I honored my father and my mother and that fourth commandment. We've recently been talking a bit about the eighth commandment, and I may be speaking to, if he calls me or writes me, is the Pope, because I want him to put out some kind of an encyclical or whatever they do that has to do with false information and stuff being passed around. Eighth commandment, thou shalt honor. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. This is a biggie. I think the churches all need to pay some attention to it. The horse thing, I told you all about my famous horse that I got to see him racing that chariot team racing Ben-Hur, and they win that race. And I got to see something I'd never seen before, was a training of how they were training them to jump over the chariots and stuff like that. And so you can say whatever you will about me, say nothing about the horse I rode in on. And hearing about, I called that CMG engineering company, and that inspection for the drainage ways are due out for Green Valley's next month. I asked for the first copy hot off the presses, and anyone else that's as interested as me can get the second copy, because I don't think anyone really is. It's 25 washes we haven't been able to keep track of in Green Valley, and with this Kinder Morgan thing, you're talking 250. So somewhere along the line, we got to get a handle on it. And I always think of Jackie Kennedy with her beautiful Spanish when she spoke on behalf of her husband, and her French had de Gaulle falling in love with her, and her Spanish went over real well in Mexico too. And the terms of my probation do not prohibit me from crossing into the country next door. So if you need an ambassador, I'm here. I want to say to the consulate, muchas gracias. I also want to say, the gentleman speaking about his Parkinson's. I was blessed to take care of my mother in the last stages of her Parkinson's, and I will not let anyone forget what's been done to her house. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Mabin.
My name is Stephanie Mabin. Do you need my address?
No.
Okay. I served on the Pima County Parks Commission, so it's been about 3 years since I've seen you all. As Gary had mentioned about we had proposed a payment schedule for the licensing fee for horse racing. Supervisor Day chose to do something much less. But what I wanted to remind you is that that was not an arbitrary number that we came up with. The Parks Commission established a payment fee for all tax exempts for all nonprofits. All tax exempts and nonprofits in Pima County are paying the same fee except horse racing. When we started on the commission, they were paying $0 to use that facility for 3 months. It increased to $3,750 for 3 months, whereas other nonprofits were paying up to $7,500 for 1 weekend. Anything that is less than the established schedule, in my eyes, is a subsidy. And it appears to be favoritism towards one tax exempt versus all the other charities and nonprofits in Pima County. So I'm asking you that if you renew the lease for horse racing, that it finally be put on the same schedule, the same payment schedules as every other nonprofit and every other tax exempt in Pima County. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, one other question
Sure.
one other comment since I have time. These people never know how involved my family has been in horse racing, and I'm not going to get into that. But my question is, one of the gentlemen that spoke said that when the state withdrew funding, that all of these horse tracks closed. If there is that little interest, why are we subsidizing them? Why are we doing this? If the state finally realized that the money needed to be going to other purposes than horse racing, maybe pull us out of 50th in education or something, I think that needs to be taken into consideration. If the interest in horse racing is not what it was 50 or 100 years ago, I don't want my tax money subsidizing it. I have huge potholes that are not fixed. I have roads, one pothole that the county came through, they didn't even fix it, it was so big. How can we subsidize horse racing when we can't fix our streets and take care of other business? Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Harris.
Good morning, supervisors. My name is Robert Harris. I'd like to thank you again for the time that you're going to sit and listen to me. I've got another horse to talk about, another dead horse that some people talk about, and that's Rosemont Copper and the people who support Rosemont Copper. My mission is to educate and oppose the proposed Rosemont project in the Santa Ritas. My wife tells me I speak too softly, so I'm trying to speak up.
You're coming through loud and clear.
They're only supposed to give the permit to Rosemont if they follow all the federal, state, and local laws. One of those would be the Forest Service fined Rosemont Copper $500,000 for starting that fire a couple of years ago. Rosemont has basically ignored the fine and ignored the Forest Service. March 15th, I went to a supervisor's meet and greet with Supervisor Miller at the Bear Canyon Library, and we discussed the sales tax, and Supervisor Miller, paraphrasing this, said, well, the unincorporated area is 6.5 to 7.1, somewhere around there, but she really wasn't sure what the unincorporated tax rate was in Pima County. I feel that somebody who's going to be taxing me should know what the tax rate is. So if somebody could help Supervisor Miller, then I believe the Arizona General Sales Tax is 6.6%. The next thing I'd like to talk about is Supervisor Miller's radio show that she likes to call Miller Time. That doesn't allow call-ins. Now, if you don't allow call-ins, it appears that it's an infomercial that should be somewhere in the in-kind contributions of campaign contributions. If Supervisor Miller is paying for this, I would really like to know where the money is coming from, seeing as how she spent Pima County money to build a website when she didn't think Pima County's website was good enough. And I was so glad to hear that other gentleman talk about Parkinson's. When I broke down last week, I thought it was just because I was turning into a wimp. I haven't told any of my neighbors about that. But I guess that's it, just to let you know a little bit more of what's on my thoughts for the day, and have a really good week. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Ed Moore?
I couldn't resist this opportunity to talk to you.
Oh, I know.
All right, when David got up and talked about the Rito Racetrack Committee, we finally agreed that we would agree to see the racetrack torn down and soccer fields put on it, but Pima County had to build the $55 million facility that had been presented to us as the cost of the new racetrack. And that had to be built before we would agree to that. He knows that. The other thing, my three sons played for Tucson United, which was the predecessor to Tucson Soccer Academy. I used to raise a lot of money for Tucson United. I remember giving Wolfgang a $7,500 check to fund the Jacobs Park tournament. Dick Grasso retired from the New York Stock Exchange with a $30 million retirement account. The New York Stock Exchange was a non-profit corporation. I know what the Tucson Soccer Academy charges their students. You should not lease property to that organization until they make their books and records public. You will be surprised at how much money they make. Thank you.
Thank you. Sophia Blue?
Hello, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Sophia Blue. I live at 3217 East 25th in Tucson. I am the Vice Chair of SEIU Pima Chapter and an employee of Pima County. Between 2010 and 2013, the Consumer Price Index went up by 6.5%. And while employees gratefully received what was called a modest raise by Mr. Huckleberry, it wasn't enough to bridge the gap between a wage increase and cost of living. Employees are still sadly behind, especially Pima County employees in the lowest wage jobs. Those employees have taken the worst hits, paying almost 20% more to clothe their families, 7% more in food costs, and 8% more in housing costs than they did only 3 years ago. The downturn in the economy continues to hurt the lowest earners the most, and hurts our economy by making those most likely to spend into those who are most likely to struggle to keep their lives intact. I'm not sure if you remember our members' comments at a previous meeting letting you know that we'd asked employees for their victories and hardships at work and in life, but I'd like to share more with you today. One library employee shared that kids from low-income neighborhood near the library are now able to come to the library for after-school snacks provided through hard work by library employees and a partnership with the community food bank. We know that they are hungry after school, and this partnership makes us really happy, she said. Another employee shared that she is leaning toward default on her student loans, as am I, and she is forced to pay her utilities and payments as the cost of everything has gone up while her wages haven't matched that increase. This is why a $1 raise will be so impactful. For this library employee, it'll mean the difference between not having to choose which bills to let go unpaid. For others, it will pay for their gas to get to work each week. $1 will be a real step forward for employees who earn the least and are struggling the most. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. We hope you'll consider this information I've given you in this coming year's budget. and also that you'll remember those who not only give significantly and creatively to their jobs and their community, but also our lowest earners in Pima County. It's time for a buck, Chuck. Thanks.
It's really $2, Chuck, isn't it? No. Mark White, did you want to speak again, or?
No, I'm okay. I just wanted to present that plan to you.
Okay.
Multiple use for everybody, and highest and best use of the park. I mean, there's only so much land, and everybody needs spectators.
Wait, why don't you come up? You're speaking. Come up and speak.
I just wanted to present that to the board as highest and best use for the park, and also use for soccer, horse racing, and special events. And there's only so much dirt there, and all events, all activities require parking. And you got to have spectators, and you got to have participants. So that's all I need to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to address us at call to the audience?
Just to set the record straight, Mr. Lees, I can document all my costs that I presented to you, and I don't appreciate being referred to as dispensing misinformation.
You need to state your name officially.
Kurt Luscombe.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was a stall superintendent at Reed Race Park. I live at 1317 West Sonora. I actually gave Richard Elias here a fact-finding fact around our track as to what was planted and what was on the future. At one time, we had 180 to 200 horses back there. When Howard King took it over, after the Goodman tied up in courts for years and years, Howard came in with his own money. I think just that inner track, the Jockeys Guild made it put all that safety rail all around it. We invested the horsemen invested on the backside thousands of dollars, the sheetrock, volunteer work. We roofed it, the whole thing. Like I said, it was a fact-finding tour. And after that tour, the barn started coming down. We had a cafeteria back there. We were self-sustained. We could take care of our horsemen. When Howard agreed, okay, the horsemen agreed, we'll settle that back part, and we'll start from there. Like I said, when I was there, we had 180 to 200 horses back there, little by little. I guess the fact-finding fact was that, well, okay, let's start knocking down the barns. We don't need the barns. We leave this little barns. And little by little, all of that has been eliminated. The Pima County Horsemen's Association consists of 3 people. And that's Pat White, Shirley, and Bill Matthews. That's what the Pima County Horsemen's Association is. When Howard started it, we had 50 to 60 members. I think some of you were even members to that organization. Boyle was one of the supervisors. I guess my time's up, but to tell you the truth, that's what it is. I've been going to that track 60 years, 70 years, you know. What do we have left? We have as far as when I was growing up in this town, what do we have left? We have Randolph, we have the rodeo grounds, and we have Ruido. That's all we got. And now we're going to start knocking them down? My God, this belongs to the people. I like to see my grandkids, adopted grandkids, go there like I did and enjoy it. And you talk about a Mexican and a relationship with Mexico, you go to those stands and I guarantee you 80% of those Mexicans are in that stand are Mexicans having a good time. So little by little, it's been knocking down, knocking down, knocking down, knocking down. Let's get together and save this place for our kids, for your kids, for our history. You know, that's part of Tucson, man. We own a lot to these horses. When the deal was eliminated was when the state came in and took out all the funding for all these little communities. Safford, Duncan,
Sir,
Douglas.
sir, your
I'm
time
sorry.
is up. Thank you.
Thank
Board of Supervisors, I just want to.
Name
I'm
for the
Patty
record.
Shirley, and I just want to make Stephanie feel better. It's been a long time since we only paid $3,000. We pay like $25,000 for our lease. I mean, you can check the figures and get the exact amount, but it's been a long time since we only paid $3,000. So I just wanted to set the record straight.
Thank you, Ms. Shirley. If there are no further speakers, this meeting stands adjourned.